My next guest coming back on the James Show, Kellen Jones from the Dallas Express. And first off, I love your story, but explain it to the people listening what you've uncovered like they've never heard this before.
James, thank you so much for having me back. If your listeners have been following H-1B visa issues in Dallas, they may have stumbled upon this story. There is an ongoing prosecution against two men of Pakistani origin in Dallas, as well as the law firm of D. Robert Jones and some other business entities for alleged visa fraud, amongst other things. The federal prosecutors, this case is being prosecuted in the Northern District of Texas, which is where Dallas resides, have alleged that Abdul Hadi Murshid and Mohammed Salman Nasir, not easy names to say, have participated in a fraudulent visa scheme to help aliens get, and these aliens are mostly coming from the Middle East, to get H-1B visas and other types of employment visas and green cards. And in one case of Abdul Murshid, he even got citizenship for himself under what the feds have alleged is fraudulent auspices. This case was brought initially in May of last year, and there's been a bajillion continuances in the case. There's been almost 100 orders in the case and other motions. And right now it's expected to go to trial at some point this summer. The last pretrial conference is currently set for early September.
Okay, so there's quite a few stories that you have of H-1B abuse in Texas. Is this the standard template that everyone's following, or is this coming from all different angles?
Well, this is really interesting because we don't typically get this much detail on visa fraud as we got from this particular indictment. Now, everyone wants to treat the H-1B visa situation as if it is the alleged fraud in Minnesota. Now, this case in Dallas is the most similar we've probably had to the alleged fraud in Minnesota. Of course, neither Murshid nor Nasir have been convicted in this case, but if the allegations are true, it's the most similar to Minnesota. But there's other levels of chicanery or perhaps dishonesty or acting beyond the legislative intent of the H-1B visa that maybe don't quite amount to fraud. Of course, I've previously reported on the fact that Texas A&M in last year and in previous years was applying for low-level, entry-level instructional roles or sometimes jobs such as communications manager and
graphic designer. Yeah, I remember having you on for that one, and I was just banging my head. But so that counts. That's technically legal, but that's clearly H-1B visa abuse. That violates the spirit of the law. That's not why the law was passed in the first place. And I think most of the American people wouldn't support it if they were given a vote on such things. So technically true, but I call that H-1B visa abuse. Now, the question is anything going to be done about it? We've exposed these people. 2 guys are going to jail, but all these people they brought here on H-1B visas, are they revoked immediately and they're sent home?
There is a list they have that is not available to the public. We can only see the initials of the people that the feds believe were brought here unlawfully.
Great.
And they have announced that they are going to cancel these visas, if these allegations are substantiated. In some of the cases, the visas may have already expired, or that person could have, in theory, have already gone home. And we'll see how long this trial lasts. These visas could expire in the interim. So it's not immediately clear what will happen with these people, but the feds have announced intent to end those visa issuances.
So what happens to the visa abuse situation? We can't even charge anyone with a crime or get anyone in trouble. How do we fix that one, Kellen?
There is a variety of prophylactic things that are currently being considered before Congress that may help with abuse. There's a bill in Congress that would Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced that would phase out the visa over several years. That's the most extreme solution. There's another solution introduced by Senator Jim Banks of Indiana that would make the types of jobs you can hire an H-1B visa for a little bit higher level, so you don't have all this entry-level chicanery going on. But also the president could take an action by executive fiat and just not issue visas to applicants who are coming from countries that have high levels of fraud. The president could cut off certain parts of India. He could cut off Pakistan or anywhere else in the Middle East by fiat, and he could do it tomorrow if he chose to.
Kellen, so it seems like the easiest way to fool the government is to make a business on paper. You can give it any old address you want. You don't have to pick up the mail. You don't have to have the lights on. You don't have to have any signage. And you can just tell them, yeah, I have employees. Is there no follow-up on this? Is there no verification process? This seems really easy to scam the government, whether it's H-1B visas or home hospice care or the Leering Center. I mean, is there no checks on this stuff?
There are some checks in the beginning. The USCIS officer that you'll engage with whenever you start filing applications for an H-1B visa, they do sometimes deny applications. One of the entities that was named in the indictment is called Reliable Ventures. And this was supposed to be sort of like a job facilitating company, and they had sponsored several H-1B visas in the past. And apparently, according to My Visa Jobs, which is a resource online that tracks this, they had some applications denied, which indicates that USCIS did have some concerns about the applications coming from this company. We don't know if those concerns were immediately related to this indictment. The indictment alleges that the fraud was going on between 2018 and the day the indictment was brought, which was, of course, in the spring of last year. Now, on the back end, there can be some verification. Lori Chavez DeRemer, who is the labor secretary under Trump, announced between 200 and 300 investigations into H-1B employers last year as part of like a crackdown on alleged fraud. Now, part of the problem is there's been a sort of contraction in oversight. The labor secretary did not say what companies it was she was looking into. It might have been this law firm and these other firms here in DFW. As I've been writing this story about the indictment, the USCIS H-1B database has gone down. Now, USCIS says that is a technical error and we should expect it back online shortly, but it's been down for several days. And so there's sort of a contraction in our ability to watch the government and see what they are doing and how they are enforcing the law against these alleged fraudsters.
All right. So another thing I learned about you, Kellen, is you're going on a tour of Texas right now talking about this. Why didn't you let me know? You were just in town, this weekend, speaking at an event. You were in Euless. You were in Tarrant County, I guess, a few days ago. Do you have another event coming up? What's going on at these things?
Yes, I'm on a statewide speaking tour about the H-1B visa. I've done 18 stops. Euless, Coppell, and Irving were the most recent. In a month, this is the biggest gap I think I've had in the tour. I will be speaking in Grapevine to the Grapevine Republicans on April 14th. And the event, it's in the evening. It's around 6:30 at Stacy's Furniture. So all are invited to come if they'd like to come. They can hear more about this issue, and they can find out more of the details about the crime, the demographic shifts, and the way this affects Americans' wages.
So this is a sort of an information tour, but you also have a part at the end where people ask questions. What's the number one question you're getting?
The number one question, everyone, I get this at every tour, is when I get on the phone with tech support and I get someone who doesn't speak English, is that an H-1B worker?
Oh, wow. Well, what's the answer? It might be.
No, typically it's not. You don't need a visa if you're offshoring the labor. So if the labor is being performed in Bangladesh, you don't need the visa because the visa is to come here.
Makes sense. All right. The other thing that just blows me away about your coverage of this is you find some of these companies like Cognizant has more than 50,000 approvals. Really? There's another company, 45,000 approvals. Man, it's hard to imagine. You have a company that big, you need 50,000 foreign workers to get the job done. That is just not believable.
Yeah, these are approvals over a 5-year window, and the reason
That's it. That's over five. That's like 10,000 a year. That's like importing a medium-sized town of foreigners and just dropping them off in Texas.
The reason 5 years is important is because the H-1B visa naturally lasts for up to 6 years, but there are ways to make it shorter or longer, and so that 5-year window kind of fits right within the length of the natural life of the visa. Now, yes, and Cognizant suffered a devastating federal court ruling last year. It was in December in the court of Judge Dolly Gee, who's a federal judge in California. And her ruling found that Cognizant had engaged in a pattern of disparate impact discriminatory conduct.
Oh, gross. I hate it already. Hate it already.
Against American employees, or as they called it, non-visa holders. And there was a lot of shocking revelations at trial, one of which was that if you were an American employee, a non-visa holder, you were 8.4 times more likely to be terminated from the bench than a visa holder. And the visa holders were like 99% of Indian or South Asian origin. What is the bench? Well, in the tech world, if you've completed a project, but you have not yet started another project, you're on the bench. And Americans were 8.4 times more likely to be terminated. Some of the statistical evidence that was presented at trial showed that the chances of this were less than 1 in a billion.
Oh, of course.
This being random, right? So the court found that this was a deliberate action on the part of Cognizant. Now, the company has announced that they plan to appeal the ruling, and we're still waiting to see how that might play out in court.
All right. Well, Kellen Jones, get the heck off my show. You're breaking my heart. Give me a reminder before you do that next speaking event. Where did you say it was?
It's April 14th at the Grapevine Republicans in Grapevine.
I'm not going to remember that. Just float me a text or something a week or two out. We'll have you back on, and I want to go to one of those. Thank you. This is Kellen Jones.